What is the best current loadout for beginners on Warzone Pacific? If you're brand new to the game and you've never even played it before, or if you've just been playing it for a little bit and you're looking for something that's a bit simpler to use that you can get good results out of, well, this loadout today is going to be for you. My aim here was to also only use Vanguard weapons, because that will give you access to using this loadout across all of the different game modes, including Vanguard Resurgence and Vanguard Royale. I'm going to be recommending a low-level build as well as the full max-level build for both of the guns I recommend in the loadout today. If you want to level up your guns really quickly, I've got another video on that which will show you how you can actually level up a gun in as quick as 3 games during a double XP event, so go check that out. So without further ado, let's jump into the loadout, starting off with the primary that I recommend for beginners in Warzone right now, and it's none other than the MG42 LMG. This is an LMG which you start off with right at the beginning of the game. You don't need to go unlock it, and it's a very beginner-friendly gun in a lot of different ways. Firstly, kitted correctly, it's a very, very accurate gun. It basically beams at long range. The MG42 also features a really large mag. This means that you can just gun away. You're not having to stop shooting, reload, kind of re-aim your shot, maybe lose track of your target. You can just stay scoped in with a nice long range scope at range, and you can just beam people down with that nice accuracy. The last thing we really need to touch on stat-wise for the MG42 is that it has an incredibly high rate of fire. And I think the rate of fire is one of the most underrated stats for a new player. New players are not going to be as accurate with their guns. They're not going to be able to control recoil as much. That is just natural. You have to accept that. So having a larger rate of fire means you're firing up more bullets per second, more bullets per minute, and therefore if you miss a couple of shots, it doesn't matter as much. So here we have the level 30 build for the MG42. These are all attachments which you can have by the time you get to level 30, so be aiming for these ones as you go through. Starting off with the Mercury silencer, sound suppression, and recoil control. Sound suppression specifically is such an important thing in Warzone when we're using our long-range gun, because we don't want to be showing up on the minimap all the time. It just means you're going to get pushed on by squads, and then you're going to lose the advantage you have of having a position set up at range, and having that silent shot is really nice for that. We lose a bit of damage range, but it's not a considerable amount, and we will be replacing it later on with a better suppressor, the MX, and I'll show you that in a bit. But for now, Mercury is fine. Moving into the barrel, the VDD 680mm 31M, it only loses out on a bit of sprint to fire and hip fire accuracy, which are 2 stats we really don't care about for our long range gun. They're the kind of things which we want on our SMG secondary, which we'll come to very soon. But it increases that accuracy, makes it more controllable, and reduces your scope sway, so it just makes the gun really sit nice and still when you've got it aimed in at range. Next is the optic, the G16 2.5. We get this really early on, and it's basically the best kind of early level longer range scope. 2.5 times might not sound like a lot, but you get a decent amount of extended range in terms of your vision, and you only lose a bit of ADS speed for running it, whilst also getting recoil control added on. It's nice that the optic actually gives you recoil control, and you definitely feel it, so a good option when we hit that level 30 mark for our gun. Next is the stock, which is the VDD skeletal, or skeletal, however you want to pronounce it. This gives you aim walking movement speed, aim walking steadiness, and initial firing recoil. Initial firing recoil is a really important stat on these long range guns, because a lot of the time what happens is you'll start shooting, you'll have a kind of crazy amount of initial recoil, and then it will steady out. But in the time where you start doing that initial recoil, you lose track of your target, they get behind cover, and basically the initial part of your shot is the most important part to be landing, because it's how you're going to get your kills. So we're reducing that. We're getting far quicker aim walking, which means we can strafe a little bit, so you can be scoped in and moving left and right, which is nice. And once again, we lose some sprint to fire speed and hip fire accuracy, which don't matter for our long range gun. Moving quickly now, the Carver foregrip is just by far the best option early game. It gives you recoil control and hip fire accuracy. The hip fire accuracy is not important, but the recoil control it gives is major. Next, the magazine is the 6.5 Sakura 125 round drums. Gives you that 125 round mag, as I mentioned earlier on. It means that you can just continuously shoot. You don't ever need to stop. It feels when you're not reloading, you're shooting this gun for a solid 20 seconds or so, and that means that you're just able to gun down many players at once in duos, trios, quads. It just makes this gun feel incredible. It also gives you recoil control and accuracy, gives you a bit more movement speed, so you don't feel like a complete sitting duck. It's a nice little addition. Brings back some of that ADS speed as well, and gives you even more fire rate, which, as I said, is good for those beginners. You lose bullet velocity, range, bullet damage, and bullet penetration, which all seem like things you really don't want to lose. Honestly, you don't feel the difference that much. There have been tests done on these magazines, especially for all the Vanguard guns. The ones where it says you lose damage, you barely lose any damage. And all the pros are so good that we definitely want this. Lastly, kind of moving through the last bits, ammunition. The early ones, I would go with Incendiary. It reduces your bullet velocity a little bit and reduces your damage range, which isn't great, but Incendiary damage is really good, especially for new players, because all you need to do is tag someone with one bullet, and it means that they can't put plates on. It makes them kind of set on fire, and it makes it harder to see around them. It's a strong bit of ammunition. It's a bit of the noob-friendly ammunition as well. The rear grip is the Pintar grip. Gives us some recoil control and hipfire accuracy. It's quite similar to the Carver foregrip. Just gives you more of that recoil control. Hipfire accuracy doesn't really matter. You lose a bit of ADS speed. That doesn't matter either, really. Early on, perk 1, we're going for Disable, which means that when you hit the enemy legs, it slows their movement, which is very easy to do. You can tag people's legs quite easily, and if you're a newer player, you might not be landing all your chest shots and your headshots properly anyway, so this means that if you are hitting their legs, you're at least still helping the team out because you're making them slow down. It means that other players on your team or in your squad can then help gun down that player. Gives you a bit more utility to the gun. Finally, perk 2. We're going for On Hand. Gives you equipment dexterity, so you're able to throw grenades and stuff, and then you're able to get your gun up quicker. It's a really nice little addition to have on the gun. And now here is the max level MG42. So once you've had a bit of fun with your level 30 build, you can then jump in and get the full actual build once you hit level 70 or you get towards there. Now, we're going to start off with the muzzle, the MX silencer. So moving from the Mercury to the MX means that we don't lose that damage range anymore. So the gun will actually do that damage at a slightly longer range. You'll feel it in some of the fights. You'll just be able to down people quicker. Feels really nice. All you lose is some extra ADS speed. Barrel, we're going for the third barrel, the 890mm 32M Luftschutz, if I pronounced that correctly. It just basically feels like a better version of that first barrel. The only thing you're losing is, yet again, more ADS speed, but you make the gun a hell of a lot more controllable in terms of recoil. It makes the gun beam. Optic, you can stick with the 2.5 times here. There's no need to change it if you don't really want, but I'd recommend that you do try out the SVT40 PU scope 3-6 times. And the reason for this is it gives you the choice of having the 3 or the 6. A lot of the time I'd recommend just sticking with the 3 and not doing the zooming in because it doesn't actually help out that much. It does increase the visual recoil a bit, but it's such a clean scope that I usually recommend this on most long-range guns. If you use it and you don't like it, you can go and use the 2.5 times. The stock is now going to be the VDD64. It gives you everything you want for an LMG. Accuracy, a bit of flinch resistance, so if people shoot you, you're not flinching off. You can just keep firing back. There's no way for people to counter you. Recoil control, aiming stability. The gun doesn't move when you're using this kind of attachment. The underbarrel, I've still got the Carver on here, but I'd recommend that you use the hand stop. I just don't have it unlocked yet. I haven't actually got to level 70. I think I'm at level 69 on the gun, but the hand stop is by far the best underbarrel when you get it because it's basically the same as the Carver, except instead of gaining some hipfire accuracy, you just gain some accuracy, which is a better stat than hipfire accuracy for a scoped-in LMG. So hand stop is what you want to go for. Magazine, we're actually sticking with the 6.5 Sakura 125 round drums. It does everything we need it to. I've already explained what it does, but none of these other rounds are any good, so we're sticking with this one. Ammunition is going to be lengthened. It just gives you a hell of a lot of bullet velocity. Your bullets travel faster. You don't need to lead your shots as much. You feel those bullets being a bit more snappy. It's incredibly important for every long-range gun when in regards to Vanguard weapons in Warzone. The rear grip is going to be the polymer grip, which has been proved to give you just the best recoil control. It gives you accuracy and recoil improvements during sustained fire. So we've got the increase to the initial firing recoil reduction, and then we've also got sustained fire recoil reduction. Basically means the gun doesn't move, as I've already mentioned. Tight grip is going to add on to basically what we've already done with the polymer grip, giving us even more accuracy and recoil during sustained fire improvements. And finally, perk 2 is going to be fully loaded, which for the LMG feels so good because it uses so much ammo. By having fully loaded, you are going to be bringing a hell of a lot of LMG rounds into the fight with you as soon as you grab this gun from your loadout. So moving on to the secondary, we are going to be using the MP40. Now, this is a gun you've probably heard a lot more about, assuming you've been on YouTube and been watching streamers play, basically because this gun, since the release of the Vanguard weapons into Warzone, has just been the meta SMG. There are better options than it in terms of pure damage, or like looking at some sort of other pure stat, like pure hip fire or something. The MP40 is just such a feel-good weapon. It allows you to move quick. It feels decently accurate at both close and slightly like mid-range, so you don't feel like you're just getting beaten by people at longer range than you, because the gun just kicks everywhere. The gun feels like it controls very nicely. Overall, it's just a great gun for both experienced and especially beginner players in Warzone. So here's the level 30 build for the gun, starting off with the Mercury Silencer. It's the exact same reasons that I laid out for the MG42. You could go for an F8 stabilizer, but I think early on, especially as a newer player, the recoil control reduction and also the sound suppression are really important, because you're not going to be finishing people as easy as some of the more experienced players. If you do leave them alive, they've got access to looking at you on the minimap, and it means that you might end up losing the fight. So sound suppression is really good for you guys. Next, the barrel, the first barrel. It's pretty similar to the MG42 again, except we're running on an SMG. It just gives you the increase of controllability of the gun. It makes the gun easier to use. Optic, slate reflector. This is the cleanest sight in the game. I've seen people try and use the NIDAR model. I've seen people using the sun filter. No, just use the slate reflector. It is a perfect magnification, 1.35 times, so you're basically at a 1 times. You haven't even scoped in much more than having iron sights, but you get this really nice clean dot in the middle, and you'll be able to track targets really easily. Stock is going to be the folding stock. That brings back some of that sprint to fire speed, as I mentioned. It gives you movement speed as well, so you're going to be flying with this gun. If you're trying to get from A to B, put your primary away, get this gun out, and get moving. You're going to have some initial firing recoil increase, which isn't great, but with some of the ranges we're going to be firing at with this gun, the initial firing recoil isn't going to affect your chance of killing someone all that much. Underbarrel is going to be Carver foregrip once again. It's just a really good all-round foregrip. It's not the best thing for SMGs, but actually now the hip fire accuracy is really helpful, because hip fire accuracy on the SMGs is really nice, because you can just get in close range with people and you can just have a fight with your hip fire rather than trying to scope in and maybe lose them in some of those mad gunfights. It actually helps out nicely. Magazine, we're going for the 7.62 Gorenko 45 round mags. These will be the mags we're using on this gun the whole time, even at max level, so it's once again similar to the MG. It gives you movement speed, ADS speed, fire rate. All you're losing out on is things like bullet velocity and damage range, which don't really matter too much for SMGs. We're firing at close range anyway. Damage, you once again just don't feel the difference. I'm pretty sure that this stat does little to nothing in Warzone. And then bullet penetration, which is kind of a here or there stat. The ammunition, I just recommend starting off with the FMJ rounds early on. They give you bullet penetration. I honestly don't think there's any others here. Potentially you could go for the subsonic, but you've got a con on that, and it only reduces your minimap ping. Honestly, at level 30, there's really not a great ammunition to pick, so I just go FMJ. Rear grip, we're going to go for the leather grip. Just gives you a bit of ADS speed and some aiming stability. The aiming stability is not that important, but the ADS speed is always going to help with our SMG. Perk, we're going to go for Perfectionist, giving you that increased recoil control in general, so you can actually fire this gun slightly longer ranges if you need to. And then perk 2, once again a bit of a filler perk, but we're going to go for fast melee, sort of similar to the ammunition at this point. There just isn't that many good options early on, so we're just going to shove fast melee in for a bit of fun. And finally, here is the full level build for the MP40. So what's changed? Not as many things as with the MG going from 30 to max level. First thing is the recoil booster. This is just it's an overpowered attachment. It gives you a lovely boost to fire rate. You do now start to appear on the map, but hopefully by the time you've got this to level 70, you've started to kind of get a feel for the game as much, a little bit more. So having that increased fire rate just means you can gun people down so quick. Barrel we've left unchanged because there really wasn't another option that works out well for the MP40. There are some of these like quick barrels like the 01B and the short, but they make the gun just kind of go all over the place, and they make the gun just feel a bit lackluster. Optic is going to be once again a slight bit of personal preference. If you're liking the slate reflector and it works out well for you, just stay with it. But if you want to try something that's a bit more aggressive, takes a little bit more skill, not too much, it's going to be this last sight, which is just a modified iron sight called the Krosnik ISO 1M. It just gives you increased ADS speed, which you don't get from the Slate Reflector. And it can make the difference in some of those close range fights. It's not the biggest thing. Try both out and see which one you prefer. Stock, we're sticking with the folding because none of the others really work as well as the folding for what we want to do. The underbarrel, we're swapping to the Mark 6 skeletal. Just gives you pure ADS speed, makes the gun feel snappier. It's just the simplest, easiest attachment we're getting on this gun to make it more of a snappy SMG. Magazine, I said, we're sticking with the Gorenko 45, and ammunition we're moving to Incendiary. Incendiary is just so good. It's really good for both experienced and new players because you can just make people not be able to heal. You can be really important in fights when you've only landed a couple of bullets. Maybe your accuracy isn't that good. It doesn't matter. You've tagged them, you've done incendiary damage to them, and now they can't heal and your teammates can help out. So Incendiary, really, really important. Rear grip, fabric grip, sprint to fire speed, ADS speed, hipfire accuracy. The three, it's like the golden trifecta of SMG stats, and it's all on one grip. It's a no-brainer. Get that on your gun. Perk, we're going to go for Brace, which brings in some of that initial firing recoil, improves it a little bit. Once again, really nice so you can land those first couple of shots, especially when you're running the incendiary ammo. It means you're going to be landing the first, 3 or 4 shots all the time, and you're able to get that incendiary tag on them. And finally, I still go for fully loaded here. Quick is another option because it will just give you the sprint speed. I think they're both good options. Try both these out and see which works best. Fully loaded isn't as important as it was on the MG, and therefore quick can be nice if you want sprint speed, but you might find yourself just not playing that quick because you're a newer player, in which case fully loaded is still going to be the best. So try both out, see which works better for you. So very quickly now, let's go through the perks, the lethal and the tactical that I've got selected for a beginner loadout. Cold-blooded, I think, is the best in terms of the perk 1 because it counters a lot of just annoying stuff in the game from a passive perspective. Some of these other ones, especially like double time, are only useful if you're using them all the time. Like you're doing tack sprinting and you're slide cancelling all the time. If not, cold-blooded is just better because it means that you don't trigger high alert in case anyone's running high alert. It negates combat scout, which I'm going to come on to as the perk I'd recommend for perk 3, which is incredibly strong on Caldera. And it means you're undetectable by the AI targeting systems and thermals. So it's just a passive perk that helps you out to not get destroyed by a load of things you might not even know are in the game properly. So just put it on and it's going to mean you don't get caught as much. Perk 2 has to be overkill. Without overkill on, you're not able to get both of the guns in your build. Perk 3 is Combat Scout. Combat Scout means that when you damage an enemy, it briefly highlights them for you and marks them for your entire squad. It's just the best thing for new players, definitely. I think it's still really good for even not new players. But a lot of the more experienced players prefer amped, where you can swap between your weapons a bit quicker. But for you guys who are newer to the game, you're not going to be doing a lot of quick weapon swaps and quick movements and stuff like that. So Combat Scout, just being able to mark someone with your MG and then be like, oh, I can see them perfectly now through all these trees. I can just beam them, I can mount up, get easy kills. Combat Scout is OP for new players, for sure. Lethal, I'm going to go with Molotov Cocktail. I think it's a devastating lethal to use. It's a throwable, and I think it's far more forgiving than a frag or a semtex. If you throw a frag or a semtex and you just miss, then it's done nothing. If you throw a Molotov and you miss, well, first of all, it's easier to land it. It's far harder to miss it because it just lands on the floor and it goes everywhere, and it might tag an enemy a couple of times. But also that fire then stays there, so you can actually keep people held in certain positions even if you miss. So it allows far more utility for the new player. And for tactical, I had to go kind of back and forth on what I recommended here, and I would honestly recommend Stim. Stim at the moment gives you just a movement speed boost. It also allows you to refresh your tactical sprint, and it gives you a faster slide. But I just think the fact that it's a simple to use ability that it adds to your kit, you're not having to think, oh, I've got to throw a stun grenade and it's going to go in the right place. A Stim is purely just going to help you play better. It's going to allow you to move quicker, you to get to positions better. It's a bit of a selfish thing to run. It doesn't help your team out all that much, but it's going to allow you to kind of improve at the game quicker and get yourself out of some sticky situations. So yeah, Stim is what I recommend. And that right there is the best beginner loadout, in my opinion, right now for Caldera, specifically using those Vanguard weapons, MG42, MP40. You're going to be flying around the map with your SMG, you're going to be beaming people with your LMG. It just covers all different angles as we need it to. If you found this video informative, then please do leave a like below and subscribe for more videos coming very soon. And yeah, I'll catch you in the next video. Hopefully see you there. Bye-bye.